Explore the extraordinary with Paranormal M, your home for tales that defy reality. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The thrill of the unknown awaits you. Can anybody help me understand what happened that night? 11 years ago, my life took an unexpected turn that I'll never forget. I was a directionless 19-year-old from Cleveland, fresh out of a devastating breakup and a brief stint at Youngstown State University. College wasn't for me. I'd only gone because my guidance counselor insisted, and I dropped out after about one semester. But during that short time, I met Jenna. It's not her real name. And our relationship continued even after I returned home. Growing up on the rougher side of Cleveland meant that we needed somewhere else to spend time together when Jenna was visiting, so fortunately, my brother shared a house with 3 friends about 10 minutes from my place. It was your typical young guy's party house, complete with 2 dogs in the basement. Chocolate, a pit bull with an escape artist's soul, and Creed, an American bulldog. One fateful night, Jenna and I were crashed on the oversized couches in the living room. That's when my brother and his friends returned from the club with a few women in tow. Among them was somebody who'd made it clear she was interested in me. After everyone else headed upstairs to sleep, I lay there wrestling with temptation. In a moment of weakness I'm not proud of, I went upstairs to pursue something that would have destroyed my relationship. Thankfully, the woman had more integrity than I did that night, firmly rejecting my advances and calling out my disrespectful behavior. Consumed by shame, I returned downstairs. I couldn't bring myself to share the couch with Jenna. Instead, I took the other couch near the living room entrance, draping my arm over my head and pulling a blanket over my face. As I drifted off, I heard what I assumed were Chocolate's familiar footsteps approaching. She was known for sneaking out of the basement. That's when things took a terrifying turn. I tried to get up to return the dog to the basement. My body wouldn't respond. Only my eyes could move. Sleep paralysis, I thought, trying to rationalize the situation. Then I felt something climb onto the couch. What happened next still haunts me. Teeth slowly sinking into my outstretched hand. The pain both sharp and deliberate. When I finally broke free from the paralysis, I tumbled to the floor. The room was empty, no dog in sight, and Jenna remained peacefully asleep on the other couch. Panicked, I ran to check the basement, only to find both dogs exactly where they should have been, looking up at me curiously from behind the basement door. I spent the rest of the night on that couch, wide awake, just trying to make sense of what had happened. Was it a supernatural warning, a manifestation of my guilt? To this day, I have no explanation for what bit me that night, but its impact was lasting. Although Jenna and I eventually parted ways for unrelated reasons, I've never even considered being unfaithful since that night. Some might call it karma, others a hallucination. But whatever visited me that night changed me forever. I've kept this story to myself for over a decade, partly out of shame, partly out of fear that no one will believe me. But I still wonder, what really happened in those dark hours? And was I merely punished for my intentions? Or maybe even saved from something worse? Has anyone ever experienced feeling like they're living between two realities or parallel universes? I've been going through something for the past 10 months, maybe even longer, and I've never met anybody who understands it. I'm hoping somebody here might relate because I feel so lost and discouraged, almost disconnected. Whenever I sleep, it's like I'm not just dreaming, like I'm actually living in another reality. These experiences feel more real than my waking life, to the point that I sometimes question which world is real. The places, the things, the emotions, it all feels like I've lived it before, like real memories. But none of it exists in real life. It started with terrifying, hyper-realistic dreams where I felt completely trapped. I was aware that I was dreaming. Every time I tried to wake up, I found myself in another dream. Each one scarier than the last one. It's like I was jumping between alternate worlds, unable to get back to the real one. Every time it happened, it lasted longer, and I became more afraid that I'd never wake up in my real world again. One of the scariest parts was that I even felt physical pain from those dreams. One time, something hit me in the back of my head in a dream. When I finally woke up, I still felt the exact same pain in real life. It's like my body was experiencing things from this other world. I constantly see places in these dreams that I know so well, like I've been there countless times. I remember them from my heart, the same way I remember my own home. I know these places inside now, and I have a lot of memories with those places. But when I wake up, I realize they don't exist in the real world. The strangest part is that I haven't even dreamed of them before. It's not like recurring dreams. I already knew these places before ever seeing them in a dream, so that's how well I know them. But where do I know them from? That's what's making me feel like I'm losing my mind. It's not just places. I see things like objects and symbols, even specific details of everyday life that feel deeply familiar. I don't even think they exist in reality. These aren't random dreamed tales. They're things I recognize with certainty, like they've always been part of my life. But they haven't, at least not in this life. These dreams aren't just brief experiences. Like every single night I go back to another life, and when I wake up it feels like I've left something behind. I can't fully be present in this world anymore because a part of me is still over there. Even when I'm awake and busy, I feel disconnected, like I don't truly belong in this reality. Because of this, I've stopped enjoying life. I don't want to make friends, have relationships, or even try to be happy. That's because I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. It's like I'm stuck in between two worlds, constantly thinking about the memories from the other place. I don't know what to do. I've tried talking to therapists and people around me, but no one seems to understand. They just think I'm imagining things or going crazy. But these experiences all... Sorry, my computer does that sometimes. But my experiences feel real. And I know what I've seen, and I know how I feel. Has anyone else ever gone through something like this? I just want to know I'm not alone. Absolutely. My friend saw a approximately 8-foot shadow creature wearing a white coat. In the previous suburb that I've lived, there's like a playground beneath a small hill that my friends and I used to hang out with there. On top of that hill is a walk path. Since it's the 80s, it was used as railing for trains. Everyone and everything that walked on that path can be seen from the playground, since it's pretty open and nothing's obstructing the view except one very thin tree. 6, maybe 7 years ago, I was hanging out on the playground with my friends as usual. I was the only one facing the hill and the walk path, and it was getting dark. I looked down for a second so I could light a cigarette, and when I looked up, I saw an abnormally tall person that was completely pitch black, but you could make up a hat that looked like a fedora, a long trench coat, and some sort of a briefcase from his silhouette. He was running fast, but dead silent. When he got behind the tree that was obstructing the view, he simply disappeared like some cartoons. I was very confused by it at first, so without saying anything, I went over to the tree to see if anyone's behind it. While walking to the tree, my friends were confused as to why I'm going, and they were asking me, but I didn't say anything. Once I got to the tree, I saw nobody. If the person were to go in any direction after passing the tree, I would have seen him. And in that moment, my heart fell. I ran back to my friends, traumatized, to tell them what happened. They started making fun of me. They were saying that I went crazy. 1 year later, I stopped hanging out with most of my friends, but I started hanging out with all the time with my current best friend. And one night, we're just chilling. We started talking about strange encounters that we had experienced. I decided to tell him about my sighting of a shadow man and creature. Once I started to describe what the man was wearing, I saw fear on his face. I said that he was wearing a fedora-like hat, and he interrupted me by saying, "And a trench coat?" I felt fear in that moment as well. He told me his encounter with the said man and the creature. He was walking on a path one summer night when he got attacked by some stray dogs. He crouched to pick up a rock, but when he lifted his head, a very tall shadow man stood right in front of him with no facial features except glowing red eyes. He wore a fedora hat, a long trench coat, and carried a briefcase. Same things I'd seen. He got scared. He started sprinting the opposite direction and went back home. Once he got home, he told his mother about the encounter. She was freaked out as well. She told him that his aunt had an almost exact same encounter around 20 years ago. One day his aunt was picking some mushrooms, and once she lifted her head up from the same, or rather when she lifted her head up, the same man stood in front of her, and this was during daytime. Only difference in this encounter was that the shadow had an old Motorola-like phone from the 80s in its hand. She ran away from it as well. Don't think there were cell phones in the 80s, but okay. The day after I decided to tell my grandmother about the incident, since she's a very religious person. Everybody in the mentioned story is Muslim, by the way, including me. But we do not practice the religion that much. She told me that it is probably a jinn, and that she did not see it, but my great-grandmother did when she was young. She seen it in her house, and she said some dua, or prayer, and the shadow disappeared. The night after that, my friend and I made up a reason for the sightings. We thought it was some type of warning to stop sinning when you are sinning heavily. Us two were sinning non-stop at the time, in parentheses. And that the object that the shadow holds means what you have to stop doing. After that, we didn't hear or see anything related to the shadow creature till about a month ago. At this current time, us two were far from the bad people that we were. We changed to be better, but Sadly, we still do not practice religion at Mud, so I doubt that our quote-unquote reason was actually it. A month ago, I had a nightmare. I swear I dreamed that I was in some abbeys, or abyss perhaps. It was pitch black, going with the latter. I was walking on some type of a wooden balancing beam, one used in gymnastics. And as I was walking on it, the shadow creature appeared on my left, but this time with nothing in his hands and he was floating. He just stared at me for a few seconds while I was walking on it. After he raised his hands in the air, did some movement with them, I was set on fire. I thought nothing about it at first. It was just a nightmare. But I continued to have the same nightmare for the next 5 days. Tonight, my mentioned best friend, who's still living in the suburb, he was coming back home from work around midnight. He went to his front door, and once he was untying his shoes, he remembered that he did not lock his car. So he went back to the car, locked it, turned around to get back to his front door, and he seen the shadow creature on the corner of his house. But now he was wearing a clearly white coat, like the ones that doctors wear, as he described it, and it was taking a step towards him, like it's sneaking. He sprinted inside his house, locked the doors, and gave me a call to tell me about the encounter. He sounded absolutely terrified. After about 5 minutes of trying to calm him down, he decided to take a peek out of his window to see if anything or anyone's there. There was nothing. Did this random woman inform me about the death of my relative before it happened? This happened literally last Monday. Hasn't left my mind since. I was waiting at the bus stop after I finished a lecture on my course, and it was completely packed of students as usual. Normally, I just put my AirPods in and sync into my playlist without really paying attention to anyone around me, or even my surroundings in general. And I've been following this routine for the past 2 years, mind you. I never care enough to look up to see who's standing there, or who I might recognize because I genuinely don't care. This time was different. There was this older blonde woman waiting at the bus stop, staring at the massive apartment blocks across the street. And despite the bus stop being packed with students, she stood out completely because of her clothes. She was wearing what I would describe as really classy vintage clothing. It was surprising, but wasn't exactly a shocker. I know these days many people experiment with their clothing styles, so honestly it's not that big of a deal to see the revival of older, more formal clothing. What was surprising, however, was her appearance. This woman looked straight out of the 1950s. Her hair was short and gelled back, similar to that of Marilyn Monroe. Something was just so out of place it was making me uncomfortable. The weirdest shit was that nobody was paying attention to her, when I was just blankly staring at her like a freak. So, I just decided to just ignore her. I turned on Spotify and began scrolling on Reddit. Ages passed, like a long-ass time. This is a teacher writing this. Honestly, I lost track of it, and my bus was taking forever. At some random point, I see students directly in front of me shuffling around, and the woman seeping through them. Now, standing in front of me. It was only now that I realized how attractive she was. I didn't get a proper look at her earlier, but I now could see that she was very, very beautiful. 10 seconds of eye contact passed. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said calmly in such a weird way. Even her accent was out of date. I was so confused confused by what she meant. She closes her mouth and walks off. At first, I thought she was trying to flirt with me or something. But then I honestly thought she was just a stupid woman trying to prank me and that she was an idiot for wasting so much time at the bus stop. Polarized much. Fast forward to when I get home. Nothing. Everything's completely normal. My mom greets me, and even though I didn't believe her, I was relieved that the woman didn't create anything negative in my life. As I'm preparing to go to bed, my mom gets a call. It's my aunt informing her about the death of her brother. He had died in a motorcycle accident. I was never really that close to my uncle, so I respectfully shared my condolences with my mom, but didn't feel too much, really, other than the shock from the whole situation before. My mother burst into tears, and I was just worked up trying to comfort her. When things had settled, I went to lie down in bed and remembered the woman. I was freaking out for like 15 minutes straight, and then eventually convinced myself it was just a coincidence, which it likely was because she didn't specify what kind of loss. The whole situation still had me dumbfounded, even if it was just a coincidence, but there was just no way it was just timed so perfectly. And that is probably the most I'll ever get to ever experiencing a paranormal encounter, if it can even be considered as one. Professor, huh? This ghost encounter lives rent-free in my mind. So I'm getting ready to go to TJ again this coming weekend. We're planning on getting a hotel yet again in TJ, and I'm actually quite nervous about it due to the last time I stayed in a hotel in TJ like 2 years ago. Where in the heck is TJ? So, back in 2022, me and my family decided to stay at a hotel in TJ last minute due to the dumb heavy rains heading back to California. Felt it was much safer to wait it out. TJ, California. It was getting late. We crossed and went to get some tacos while I called a few hotels in TJ. By the border. Tijuana, maybe. But most were booked and ended up finding one that had one room available, so we ended up taking it. We get there, room AC is going up for no reason. Can't seem to stop it. After the first hour, we just basically called the front desk, and the lady told me to turn it off, but told it wouldn't turn off, just keep going up, and we were sweating at this point. She said she'd send somebody to come check it out, and they took another 40 minutes to arrive. My toddler at the time, fussy due to the warmth, was tired and couldn't sleep. I looked down the hall, and the guy was barely coming. The AC got stuck in the mid-80s, something like that, and he just made it worse by saying, "Leave the door open, let the air come in, and let the room cool down. No one will come in." I was tired and kind of irritated. It was almost midnight. And hearing this made me snap. I told him I wanted a full refund, or another room, now. He insisted, and I ended up calling front desk. The lady gave me excuses that there were no other rooms available, blah, blah, and then finally after, 15 minutes of going back and forth, she said, "Fine, I have another room, but it's on the first floor, and it has 2 twin beds instead of the queen. And there'll be an extra fee." I snapped back and told her, "No, give me a refund now. This is ridiculous. May I speak to your manager?" And then she said, "No, my mistake. No fee will be added. Meet me on the first floor elevator." So, there we go. Down the 6th floor, all sweaty, all of our stuff. I'm getting a headache coming down the elevator. We get off and we see the lady standing there with a smug face. Annoyed, then opens the door to the room that was next next to a small, tucked-in maintenance room, and another door that said exit on the right side of the room. I turned around to thank the lady she was gone. Walked in the room, noticed a stale smell in the room. Like it's never been in use, perhaps. The sheets were pretty cold and stiff. The bathroom was definitely just cleaned. Figures. Anyways, I put everything down in the chairs, just put my toddler in one bed with me, and her dad was knocked out in the other bed across the room. Turned off the lamps, and I remember just drifting off fast up until I heard what sounded like dragging. Like when you drag a heavy chair across wood floors. You know that sound. And it was right behind the bedboard. I opened my eyes and I kept hearing it just go back and forth like 3 or 4 times. Then that's when the soft thumps on the wall behind me started. I sat up and it was dark, but a bit of light came through the cracked curtains from this billboard outside the hotel. I decided to get up, use the restroom. When I got off the bed, the sound stopped. Didn't think much of it. I was tired and I had to get up in a few hours, drive back to California in the AM, and that's when I went to wash my hands and I heard another thump on the wall. It was right behind the mirror. This time it was harder, and again I didn't think much of it, just headed back to bed. As I'm walking back to bed, I see my little one sitting up in the bed rubbing her eyes, asking for her dad. So I laid her with him and took advantage. I had a whole bed to myself for once. Not even 5 or 6 minutes later, the dragging picked up again, but this time I heard like muffled weeping and sobbing behind the wall. I waited a moment and then it happened again, but higher up the wall, but more toward their bedside. I thought maybe a couple got into it and they fought, or maybe a hooker was being assaulted. It is Mexico. I sat up trying to let my eyes adjust in the dark again, thinking I should call the front desk lady. It's getting loud, and as I'm trying to focus on the cracked curtains when out of my left peripheral, I catch a roundish shadow peek at the end of my bed. Turned around pretty damn scared. Told myself it's my hair, but realized it was up in a messy bun. Then I froze. I saw the shadow slowly peek from the bathroom door, then zip back up really fast. My eyes froze. Never felt this type of fear in my life, but my brain was like not letting me set in what I was looking at. And I remember grabbing the sheets tightly and pulling them over my head, curling up in a ball and trying to make sense of what I saw. Maybe I'm just tired, and maybe I should just leave one lamp on just in case. Somebody broke into her room. My mind was just basically racing at this point. So I'm laying there, under the smelly, stale sheets smelled like, I don't know, damp. But I was just trying to make sense of what I saw. I heard the thuds again softly on the same wall, but then they picked up pace and scattered. Went up like the wall, and the weeping sounds got louder with them. Then they stopped, like right on the ceiling. Well, I don't know how long I stayed curled up under the sheets, but I needed air. I was sweaty again, and I really wanted to get my phone from my purse, and my dumbass left it in the chair across the room. I could legit feel my heart beating out of my skin at this point. I made the stupid decision to uncover myself. And as I am, the sobbing and weeping crying screeched right next to my right ear. It was so loud I tried screaming and fell out of the bed. I just remember scrambling to get back onto the bed and cover myself up again, like I legit froze up hard after that. I didn't go back to sleep. I was legit frozen on fear and shock and confusion. Mind's racing again, I don't know. I just remember seeing the light from the cracked curtains become a bit brighter and being able to see a bit of sunlight through the sheet. It took me a minute to uncover myself because I was legit scared I'd hear whatever the fuck that was again. But eventually I did, and when I got the courage to get up and go to get my phone, my alarm went off for "Hit the road back home." End quote. After everybody was up and showered, I just wanted to leave. I didn't want to eat there. I just wanted to leave that damn hotel from hell. On our way out of the room, I looked back and saw there was no room behind our room. Only the maintenance room that was further back and the exit door. So, on our way back home, I asked my boyfriend if he heard anything last night. He said no, but I thought I heard you yell or something, but he was so tired he just went back to sleep. I told him what I had seen and heard and left him taken a bit aback because he doesn't believe in the paranormal. And he noticed I was really frazzled by what I encountered and I wasn't myself that morning. Other things occurred after about 2 weeks of being home. One in particular that left me floored and not wanting to stay the night in TJ ever again. But here we are, booking another hotel in TJ. I'm honestly taking earplugs this time. That day is carved into my mind like it was yesterday. Tijuana. An inexplicable incident. This happened about 8 years ago. I still think about it from time to time because it's truly inexplicable. I wonder if somebody here could explain it, based on what I wrote, not just some extraneous assumptions. At the time, I had a DSL router in my living room, to which my phone line was connected, plugged into a USB jack. Turns down volume. It was standing on a small table near my computer. One night after I had worked online, I went to bed and started reading on my iPad. I remember I was reading an ebook and I just borrowed from the open library. I had just been reading for maybe about 15 minutes. That's when I noticed the internet connection was gone. I waited for about 5 or 10 minutes. It often came back spontaneously, but then I got up to go reset the router. Sure enough, the red light was blinking, and then as I reached for the box to press the reset button, I noticed the phone cable was lying on the floor, was far from the USB jack. That's it. And it's no small matter because, 1, I never touched the router before I went to bed. 2, the cable was plugged tightly into the USB jack at all times, like you had to push it until it kind of clicked. 3, upon examination, the part that went into the jack did not appear to be damaged or broken in any way. And even if it had been, and had somehow fallen out, it wouldn't explain the position of the cable when I found it, far away from the jack. 4, no other human and no animals of any kind were present, or any other time. And 5, I was not under the influence of any kind of substance, or even sleepy for that matter. That was the only time something like that happened, and I would like to explain it reasonably, which is why I'm posting it. But I cannot post this on some computer or hardware sub because it's not really a hardware problem, it's quite literally paranormal, i.e. something that appears to be beyond normal. Which the narrator considers as being supernormal. But hey. Could it just be the effect of the area the house is on that makes it seem haunted? I have lived in this house for nearly 25 years. It's electric heat, no carbon monoxide potential, and is on a former swampy area, and has a power pole directly on my property. I've been debating lately how much I'd like to find a way to sell and move from here. That's because it's, well, never truly felt like home. I can't tell you why. To me, it's just a place to live, but not a home. It's been a family home for over 30 years, though. The bottom half, completely finished basement, was built in the mid to late 1970s. The upper part was an older home that was brought in from elsewhere, age and origin unknown. So, with all of that out of the way, past, after my family first moved in, my mother would often see or talk to quote-unquote me when I wasn't there. Once, she saw me come upstairs, wearing a different outfit than I had, and spoke to me, and I replied. Another time, she went downstairs to ask for something. Quote-unquote I replied through my closed bedroom door, and when she came upstairs, she was surprised to see me in the living room. And I experienced the same type of instance at one point, except it was using my stepdad's voice. I never heard of mimics until recently on reading this forum, but now I wonder if that was what that even was. The me just replied to my mother, but my stepdad, all of these in quotes, was more like trying to get me to go into the empty hallway. One evening, my stepfather was napping on the couch after work while home alone. When he woke up, he saw a man standing in the doorway to the living room. The man said to him, "I'm not afraid of you." My stepfather jumped up and the man was gone. No one else ever saw or encountered this man. 19 years ago, he got sick with cancer. And on the day he went to the doctor and got diagnosed, he saw 2 women walk through the kitchen in long dresses. He never came back home that day and ended up passing in the hospital about 3 months later. But he also saw an angry woman come into this hospital room during cancer treatment. Could be similar type of event. He got very sick very quickly, unrelated to the house. For years, the entire family would hear the back door open and shut loud in the overnight and early AM. This continued for years intermittently, even after most of the family moved out. After a few weird noises, including footsteps on the stairs with no one there, a few years back I put an old, quote, blessed cross up on that door. Hasn't occurred since. I do have a great aunt who heard something calling her name during the first and only visit decades ago, refused to ever come back again. She's lived in this haunted, well, not this, but other haunted houses before. So she's not easily frightened by that sort of thing, but would never talk about it. Just that something said her name and she would never come back. But she's eccentric. After my grandmother, her sister passed away, and she swore she saw her looking into her own home's windows. I'm not saying she's a reliable narrator, but she's never come back and told multiple family members about her name being called, but that's all. Things constantly break, especially water-related things. There's been 2 complete basement floodings. A pipe burst behind the wall, water heater broke and leaked twice. Sump pump replaced twice. Washer broke down and flooded 3 times. Taps and faucets have been replaced at least twice, and the roof has been replaced twice. That's been in the last 15 years or so. Possibly because of the former swampy land, I don't know. And it always takes longer than it should for people to repair things, too. There is a ghost cat that's been seen by multiple people. It's mostly just a dark-shaped cat. You can see its eyes, though. It's not really any of the cats that this family's ever had here. Just a solid black cat. And it'll look at you. One night I came upstairs in the near dark. A cat came over to me. I reached down to pat it. My hand threw it, and it was gone. Can't explain it, but I've seen it multiple times, as I've had at least 2 other people over the years. I know it's not my cats, though, but I've never seen them interact with it or anything really. Beyond staring at nothing sometimes. That doesn't happen a lot. No one has ever stayed in this house for long previously. The last former owners left holes in the walls that were badly covered over with wallpaper. Like fist punch holes. They sold the house when they got divorced. This is just a few things that have happened, and there's been many odd little things over the years, but I think this is already too long to get into it all. Guess I just want to know if anybody thinks it's just because of the swampland and Power Bowl combo causing people to imagine this sort of thing over the years, or if it may actually be haunted in some way. Sometimes it feels like something here likes negativity. I don't know. Not me. Can somebody tell me what's going on? As a healthy skeptic, this is my last resort. First, the minor things. I see things out of the corners of my eyes. Particularly, a man sat in a plaid shirt, hunched over in the corner of the room. I usually see this man in the same spot, but sometimes in several different places. I've also seen other figures in my peripheral vision, sometimes even people I know. But most of the time, just dark, moving, sort of human-like shapes. This never happens to me, and has happened to me, well, apart from this job. Thank you, giant truck. Second of all, sometimes I'll put metal cutlery out and it will slowly move in an unnatural way across the flat tables without anyone touching it. I've stood several times in the empty room and watched it slowly move in strange patterns. Due to the cafe and shop being underground, there's no windows or doors to the outside of this area, so no breeze. There's this one bathroom that I've seen a dark figure lurking in the doorway of. Peers around the corner at me in the pitch black. I've seen its thinned out face and tall build. That bedroom also has a stand and cupboard locked away from customers. Sometimes, a loud banging comes from the other side, which rattles the door and lasts about 10 consistent seconds. It's as if somebody's pounding the other side with something heavy. This has only happened 3 times. People at my work have also reported strange happenings, like hearing whispers in their ears and random things turning on. I've never experienced anything paranormal, well, especially not at home. Ever since I worked here and spoke about these occurrences at my home, things have begun to happen. Like there's a wall with many pictures of my family on it. One picture fell off the wall in the night and smashed. It was the only picture that just had me on the entire house. A picture that they were in, I'm assuming. My stepdad couldn't understand why it fell off. There was no visible damage to the hook and it had always hung on. I have also seen a distorted face with nothing but a long neck sort of peer and shoot under my bed when I saw it. Once I sent a voice note to my friend and I was telling her about the occurrences at work, and I was home alone, and in the background I can hear something saying like, "What's happening?" And then you can hear a metal pan slowly grate across the stonework surface. Then a scratching as if somebody's dragging fingernails across the ceiling. Lastly, I had a few strange dreams that don't even feel like dreams anymore. I wake up and the bed is violently shaking. Then a tall, unclothed, unhuman thing with pale skin jumps from the end of my bed and runs toward the door. The weird thing is my boyfriend started to have very similar dreams. This thing looked like the head and long-necked thing that I saw going underneath my bed in the middle of the day when I was doing laundry. A few stories and a few notes. This happened to a friend of mine who I trust. One night he was working as an office manager on an industrial site. He was the last guy in the building and had to complete some paperwork before heading off. It was quite late by the time he was finishing up. His office looked onto the main office floor, and in front of his office and across the room were 2 windows that had metal shutters in front of them. That's on the outside that had been pulled down. That part of some point, he noticed what he thought were the headlights from a car outside the building, which were showing through the metal shutters of the right-hand side window. The car was clearly turning because the light was seen on the left-hand side window. It's only at that point that he froze. He suddenly realized that the light had traveled from the right window, across the inside wall, then through the left window. And at that point, he left the building sharpish. 2. This happened to a radio DJ who recounted a story one night while I was traveling home. And he's quite a funny DJ. His name is Spence, and he appears on the radio in Staffordshire in some local radio station. Anyway, he said that one night at around 2 a.m. he was traveling home from a radio show and got to a well-lit cross-junction that had a pedestrian island where the traffic lights were, and suddenly, he clearly noticed a woman pushing a pram in the area of the pedestrian island. Something made him turn away, but when he looked again, she was gone. 3. This happened to me in County Cork, Ireland, in the town of... He's also from there. In the town of Cobb, back in the 1990s. In that town is a massive cathedral, and having just arrived in a cold morning, I thought I would go to the cathedral for something to do and keep out of the cold. So I walked on in and walked down the central alleyway. Apparently, it's not the aisle. The aisles are 2 lanes on the side of the room, so while I'm walking toward the front of the cathedral, I'm looking at the religious pictures on either side of the walls. But as I get closer to the front, I'm conscious of somebody silently looking at me near the altar. I'm looking in their direction, but I had a strong sense that they did not approve of me being there. They were barrel-chested and had white hair. I kept walking slowly toward the front, but still not looking at the person. But finally, I got to a point where I had to make eye contact and introduce myself. What I saw was not a person at all, but a huge wreath of flowers. They were dedicated to the priest who had died the week before. I accept that I could have been mistaken, but the feeling I got from being stared at was unmistakable. 4. The next story isn't really a story, but more of a comment a coworker gave me. Back in 1975, there was a disaster at Moorgate Station in London on the Underground. 3 carriages overran the platform and smashed into the wall 20 feet beyond the platform. Lots of people were killed, and the cause of the accident is actually still unknown, despite countless theories. I work in the rail maintenance industry, and our company provides maintenance staff who work every night, 365 days a year, in keeping the underground running. Graham, a coworker, was talking about things in general. He said all of the underground stations, Moorgate is the one where more weird stuff is reported, from the operatives at least. These are hairy, arsed contractor types, than anything else. 5. Finally, a story from a holiday in Indonesia years and years ago. While I was there, I came across a guy from London. Told me about his childhood home. He told me that he always felt uneasy sleeping in his cot in the back room next to the toilet, even as a child. So he said one night he awoke and could only describe what he saw as various colored orbs suddenly appearing across the room, and a man appearing from nowhere. The guy came over to the cot and stared down at him. He had a mustache and a confused expression on his face. The guy telling the story then screamed, and his mom came into the room, turned the light on, and the guy disappeared, and that was that. It was only after that that he found out that the room had been used by the previous occupants for seances. Rough. Further weird occurrence. years ago now. I was living in Inglewood, which is a Victorian four-story pile in Folklore Park South. It's between Wilmslow and Alderley Edge. Hope I said those right. I was there because I worked in Wilmslow for a law firm. I'm so sorry. Getting tired. I could walk to work through the village in about 20 minutes. I lived on the top floor in a one-bed flat. To give some ideas to the layout of the flat, you entered into a hallway, and on the right was the kitchen and the living room. On the left was the bathroom and the bedroom. It was great at first. It allowed me to get to Manchester really quickly for a night out, and I could spend weekends in Wilmslow. Sunday mornings in Alderley Edge. It was also a proper penny magnet, so to speak. I was single at the time and on dating sites, and I seemed to get lots of women coming around, but over the course of the time there, things started to become weird. For a start, I stopped trusting the place. Hardly even used the front room. I was preferring to eat in the kitchen, or maybe even my bedroom, and do work at the desk in the bedroom. When I had a shower, I would find myself leaving the bathroom door open and staring down the corridor, never taking my eyes off it. When I slept at night, I found I would wake up. Nothing unusual about that, I guess. It's just that I would wake up having sat bolt upright, and I would open my eyes so that I was staring at the bedroom door. And that's another thing. The door. I closed it each night, and it would not stay closed at all. I was on the top floor, and there is a possibility, but a very faint one, that subsidence could cause the door to open. But I totally doubted that. For whatever reason, whenever I woke, the door was fully open, not just ajar. My now ex-wife and girlfriend at the time came over one night, and she hated the place. She felt that the whole place felt really dark and, well, troublesome. But all this leads up to the night I left. Basically, before I left, I had to take the meter reader for the electricity and square up with the service provider. To do this, I had to go down to the basement, and to do that, I had to meet the landlord, who was an old RAF guy. He lived on the ground floor. He opened up, and we went down, and two things come to mind. The first was that the rubber covering on the electrical wires had melted through overuse, I guess. The second were the crayon pictures in the area of the basement which had been set aside for my flat. Obviously, children had been allowed to play down there at one point, and that was their lasting legacy. Anyway, I got the reading of the electricity, and we both went to the stairs and turned off the lights, and he locked the door behind us, departed back to his flat. I then went upstairs and started to pack everything I had into my car. I don't have a lot, but the whole process still took me about 10 trips up and down the stairs. Now, before I say the next bit, let me explain that I had a good friend who lived next door. She was a music teacher and didn't earn a lot, but lived alone and was always open for a bottle of wine when I bought one around. She was, shall we say, careful with her money, and needed to be since she didn't earn a lot. The other thing that needs to be said was that evening, a December one, it was quiet. Little to no wind, but warm. So as I go to the main entrance to the stairwell, the basement door is on the right, and all I hear is bam, 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 bam from behind that door. No voices, just a repeat, proper violent smashing against the door. I froze and immediately went to Anne, the woman next door. "Hi, Anne," I said. Do you want to come up and see if you want any of the food I still got left over in the freezer?" And thankfully she said yes, because there was no way I was going back past that basement door alone. I have no explanation for what I heard that night at all. And the time I was there, I'd never heard anything from that door. Nothing. I just went mad for a few seconds, and I got the hell out of there. Estes method at home. One day it was just me and my sister at home alone. My sister, a 19-year-old female, downloaded an app that basically worked like a spirit box. Both my sister and I thought it'd be funny to try it out. So I blindfolded my sister with an old scarf of mine, and my sister used her earbuds to hear through the app. At first it was normal, until my sister started hearing words like help. I asked who was this, and didn't answer, only silence. I asked again who was it, and this time it said attached. I asked who are you attached to, and it said red hair. My sister dyed her hair red a month before. And for confirmation, Kay asked, "Are you attached to my sister?" And it said yes. I was kinda spooked and asked, "How many of you are there?" Only to receive, "We're here." I asked if it was in the house, and I only got the word forest, and come find us. The town I live in has a forest on the west side of town, and 3 of my friends lives there. I asked again who this is, and I received a response, "He's coming." Like anyone, I asked, "Who is coming?" Only to get, "He is," and run. I asked, "Who is he?" I got, "Don't speak of him." It was weird. I asked some more questions, but all I can confirm was that there's either an entity or a demon in the forest. But I then decided to try to change the topic and asked, "How did you die?" And I got the words bombing. And it turns out, back World War II-ish era, there was unexploded hand grenades in a building on the main street of the town I live in. And turns out, back in 2006, a contractor found those grenades. I got my sister out of the Estes method and told her about what I found out. Then I suggested I go under, so I did. My responses wasn't like my sister. Mine sounded more panic-scared, saying words like "run and get out." And when my sister asked who she should run away from, the thing said her. My sister asked if the spirit was afraid of me, and the thing said yes, and dark hair. My hair is a dark brown. There is more than was said that I can really remember, to be honest. But the one thing I'll always remember was hearing the loud male's voice say, "Get out." I was spooked out and got out of the Estes method, and after taking a little break, I went under again. But this time I only received silence, and the words like, "Not safe, run, and get out." After all that, we can confirm that there was spirits attached to my sister. The spirits are maybe afraid of me for some reason. And also, there's an entity or something in the forest. And I gotta say, I have never witnessed a legitimate phone app for anything like this. So I remain ever skeptical. Not that I'm a non-believer, but a non-believer in 99.99% of phone apps. Spirit encounters with my late Mamo. My Mamo, bless her soul, passed away in 2023. That was in late December. She had been really sick for a while and passed away peacefully in the morning. She was surrounded by loved ones and family the night before, so I think she made her peace to pass on the next day. She knew it was time. Well, around 2 days later, I could smell my Mamo's perfume, which is this Avon one. strong old lady scent. Around my entire house, and especially all over my dog. My dog, whom my mammal loved so much in her last years of life. The scent lingered in my house for days, yet I was the only one who could smell it. The scent being especially strong on my dog's bed and on my dog's fur. No one uses the vintage Avon perfume in my family, and that same perfume bottle was in her room, still atop her dresser. I smelled it to make sure it was the same one I was smelling, and it was. I knew the scent was her, and she was visiting us one last time before leaving. Her death was extremely hard on my family. I think she was trying to just linger a little bit longer before passing over fully. Even now, I still dream of her frequently, especially before big events. I had a dream. I was watching her shopping for Christmas decorations, her all-time favorite season. But I couldn't join alongside her. It was like a film was blocking me from fully reaching out and getting her attention. But it was like all time stopped in that dream, just watching her push a cart full of tinsel. It was till she turned a corner and disappeared. There was a bright light behind her, too. My favorite dream of her, though, was, right before my 21st birthday. The night before, I dreamt of hugging my mammo, and she placed a kiss on my forehead. Then a bright light came from behind her, and I woke up. The latest dream I had was on the night before her 80th birthday this past January. I dreamt of hugging her. My mom also dreamt of her shopping for a birthday cake that night. She was getting the cake for her tia, who passed away decades earlier. Sorry that got kind of long, but I never dreamed of my mammo, just simple things of being in her house while being a child again. Or just seeing her exist. I don't know. Does anybody else have dreams of past loved ones frequently? Haven't had this happen before, but maybe it's because I was very close with my mammo. And think about her frequently. There's never a day I didn't see her when she was alive. Story with my young daughter. Not sure what to believe. We had moved into my mother-in-law's home when my daughter was 4 months old. By the way, my daughter's now 38. So we were a young couple, both 21, living with my best friend in his apartment when we got married. So when our daughter arrived, it was time to move to my mother-in-law's house. Had a backyard, baby's old room, and help from my mother-in-law. She was a widow, lost her husband when my wife was 2 years old. The decent-sized house that she purchased after her husband passed away. She was still working. That was while I was also working, and my wife was a stay-at-home mom. About a half year into this arrangement, my daughter started waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Since I was working, my wife got up and just tried to comfort her. But it always took more than an hour to comfort our daughter. This went on for 3 or 4 nights straight. Finally, my wife was sleep-deprived and frustrated, so she nudged me to get up and comfort the baby. The first night I entered her room, my daughter was standing in her crib crying and looking specifically at a corner. I picked her up to soothe her. No matter which way I turned while rocking her, she kept looking at that corner. The hairs on the back of my neck was standing. Eventually, she fell back asleep, though. And by the way, this happened for 2 additional nights, crying and looking at that corner. But the nights after that, she would cry to wake us up. But by the time I got there, she was quiet, yet still looking at that same corner. Upon reflecting, even when we were at that apartment as a baby, she would look up to the ceiling corner above the changing table. She would babble, like she was talking to someone, but not directly at us. That's whenever we would change her. Because she was continuing to wake us up, approaching sleeping in the front room while both of our rooms were in the back. I told her the full story. I guess I was hoping she would share the load of soothing the baby. She said, "Okay, don't worry, I'll deal with this." And by the way, my mother-in-law is a deeply religious Catholic, never misses Mass, and combined with some of the superstitions from her country, believes in her powers of faith to heal small aches and pains through massage. Absolutely real, by the way. Interestingly enough, after we told her, our daughter didn't cry out anymore, and all of us got great sleep for a week. But here's the thing. My mother-in-law never got up to soothe the baby. The crying just stopped. I was amazed, so after a couple of weeks I stopped to my mother-in-law and I asked her what she did. She simply said that she asked her late husband not to visit the baby because he was scaring her. That was it. My beloved mother-in-law passed away 7 years ago. Having watched our mother-in-law struggle in her home alone with all her health issues, we moved into a bungalow, since to spare my arthritic knees. During COVID, my daughter moved back home and had her grandson. And yet, sometimes my grandson would babble to a specific ceiling corner of the family room when we change him. And we all say he's talking to his great-grandmother, and even now has a fondness for my mother-in-law's pictures, even though he's never even met her. Rest in peace. My grandparents' home is haunted. My grandparents' home has always been haunted as far back as I can remember. Every animal in the house to this day refuses to enter the back bedrooms and hallways. Even my giant mutt with separation anxiety. The feeling of unease and being watched is constant to the point many of my relatives refuse to use the bathroom in that house. It's down that hallway. I used to sleep in the worst room of the house, the one that just emanated negativity and fear. I have many stories from growing up in that house, such as shower curtains being yanked, whispers and footsteps in the night, opening and closing doors. But recently, things have kicked up a notch. My grandmother asked me to make the entity leave, and I did try. Sage, incense, holy water telling the entity to leave as it was unwelcome in the home, etc. It did not work. But things did, well, quiet down a little bit until now. Though I've moved away, I still visit often, and I also paint. I spent months on a painting of lovebirds that my grandparents wanted to take and place in their home. I didn't think much of it. I mean, sure, books and small knickknacks randomly fly off the shelves, but a large painting would be fine, right? Wrong. This painting is nearly 4.5 feet long and 4 feet wide and sat perfectly above their fireplace. As my grandparents are older, they had not hung the painting due to being unable to use ladders, but they leaned it against the wall and it stayed that way for weeks. Recently, they found my painting thrown to the floor, face down, with punctures through the canvas and the canvas frame, made of thick wood, and it was warped. The glass statues in front of the painting had also been knocked down, but they were unscathed, and nothing was found that could have caused such damage to the painting. My grandfather, bless his kind heart, painstakingly tried to repair the canvas and minimize the damage, though the frame is still warped. The painting itself no longer has gaping holes as he pieced it back together and taped it back, even showing me his repairs that are far better than I could have imagined. He's carefully propped the painting back up, placed heavier knickknacks in front of it. Still, I am sad about my work being damaged, and I suspect it's from this entity. We don't live in an area where seismic activity would have been a concern, and even if it had been seismic activity, I would have assumed either precariously placed knickknacks would have fallen and been damaged. They have floor-to-ceiling bookshelves full of stuff in the same room, and the mantel still but most of it's small and fragile stuff untouched, and nothing else has really had a place. I've told my grandparents that I'm not equipped to tackle this entity and directed them to other resources. This thing, it's that constant headache. That was really since I was a baby in that house, and I suspect it won't go anywhere else willingly. And made its annoyance at my removal attempt very clear. This is relatively tame compared to many stories I've seen on here, but I've been dealing with the paranormal my whole life, and this one particular entity is, well, incredibly frustrating. If anybody has any advice for grandparents, I'd love to hear it. The night before my cousin's wedding. Indeed. My family and I were in our home country for the summer. We were attending my cousin's wedding at the time, and as always, we all stayed at her grandparents' house. I had to share a room and bed with two of my other cousins, their sisters. The older cousin was the same age as me. The younger one was 3 or 4 years younger. The younger one slept in the middle. Before I share my encounter with you guys, I just want to make sure you understand the room's layout. The bed was in a corner against the wall. On the opposite side, there was a closet with a big mirror facing the bed. To the right of the closet was the door. At some point in the night, I woke up and realized I just couldn't move. I could only move my eyes. Out of nowhere, I saw that the door was wide open and a little girl walked in. She was a small child with shoulder-length hair, like a Dorica, if you know what I mean. At first, I thought it was my cousin who was supposed to be sleeping next to me. But when I looked to my side, both my cousins were still asleep. The little girl wandered in and out of the room, moving in front of the bed and the mirror. Then she climbed onto the bed frame and started crawling toward me. That was the moment I woke up from my sleep paralysis. The next morning, I asked my aunt, who slept in the room next to ours, if my cousin, her daughter, who was sleeping with her, had woken up in the night and maybe sleepwalked. This cousin was the only other one who resembled the girl that I saw during sleep paralysis. My aunt looked at me confused and said no, because she had been with her the whole time after all. I couldn't shake the dream, so I just went for a walk. My grandparents' house is right next to a cemetery, and I often go there to visit my ancestors. I just decided to take a walk there. As I approached the headstones of my great-grandparents, I noticed a smaller headstone about 3 meters away. Walked over to look at it, and it was this little girl who had visited me. The picture on her headstone was 100% her. That's when I decided to go back and ask my grandmother about the little girl's passing. Turns out she was one of my relatives. She had passed away at a young age due to an accident. And I wish the opposite of an accident for all of you guys. Sweet dreams. See ya.